Welcome to Tibet This Week, where we bring you a weekly news edition on His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibet, and the Central Tibetan Administration. These are the headlines. His Holiness the Dalai Lama attends long life prayer offering. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and CTA congratulates Anthony Albanese on his re-election as Australia's Prime Minister. Sikyong Penpa continues Tibet advocacy in DC. Speaker Khenpo Sonam and Sikyong Penpa condole the passing of US Congressman Jim McGovern's daughter, Molly McGovern. Speaker Khenpo Sonam and Sikyong Penpa congratulate Mark Carney on his election victory. Kalon Gyari attends 26th anniversary of Bharat Tibbat Sahyog Manch with Delhi Chief Minister Rekha Gupta. 28th Shoton Festival kicks off in Dharamshala. Coordinator Tsering engages with Tibet supporters in Amiens. Tibet House Japan and Save Tibet Network jointly organize Tibetan Spiritual Festival in Tokyo. On Tuesday this week, His Holiness Dalai Lama attended the lifelong prayer offered by Shang Gandhin Shokuling Monastery, Tsering, and the Pagri community. About 5,000 people attended the ceremony.
Tenphel che jana nala yene nangshu chi chebe shani pandoro dozu chetoya chi che kanda nge milu dindichi tolne ene thamyo lanso ne aga masa sona che ne ta kanda chi sanje shumdende gajije di chi tempe shamdi Lojura Kasha Ringaya, Metande, she Tempe Shamde Tuyada, Dumbo Gajin Jangi, Gajin Savia Chigi, Chetu Re Sabachi, not so tigitu.
This Monday, His Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote to Anthony Albanese to congratulate him on his re-election as Prime Minister. Along with good wishes, His Holiness, Speaker Khenpo Sonam of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, and Sikyong Penpa of the Central Tibetan Administration thanked the government and the people of Australia for demonstrating exemplary support in providing sanctuary and support to Tibetan refugees and interest in His Holiness's effort to promote kindness and compassion. Sikyong Penpa, continuing his high-level engagements in Washington, D.C. this month, held separate meetings with Senator Paul Grove, sitting members of Congress, and staffs from the offices of Senator Todd Young and Senator Pete Ricketts. Last week on Friday at the Office of International Campaigns for Tibet, Sikyong met with Ambassador Paula Dobrinsky, former Under-Secretary of State and former U.S. Special Coordinator for Tibet issues, followed by an informal meeting with Todd Stein, Senior Staff Director of the Tom Lantis Human Rights Commission. Sikyong met with U.S. Senator Jeff Markley, a long-standing advocate for Tibetan rights and lead sponsor of the bipartisan Resolve Tibet Act of 2024. Sikyong met with 8 senior officials from the U.S. Departments of State's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, South and Central Asian Affairs, and East Asian and Pacific Affairs. In separate meetings, Sikyong met with U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham and U.S. Representative Gregory Meeks, ranking members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and with Senator Ted Cruz and his staff at the Russell Senate Office Building. A meeting also took place with Bob Ankerson of the Tibet Fund and Anjali Kaur of USAID. As part of his ongoing official tour, Sikyong also interacted with the local Tibetan community in Charlottesville, visited the Tibetan Sunday School at the Vienna Community Center, and met with the Tibetan communities in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia at the Capital Area Tibetan Association, all last Sunday. In terms of media interaction, Sikyong sat down for an interview with NDTV and appeared live on Northeast Live, where he spoke on his ongoing official meetups and on the succession of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Speaker Khenpo Sonam and Sikyong Penpa extended their heartfelt condolences to U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern on the tragic passing of his daughter, Molly McGovern. In a separate letter addressed to Congressman McGovern, both Sikyong and Speaker admired Molly's extraordinary bravery in embracing life despite her rare cancer diagnosis, and notes that the entire Tibetan community mourns alongside him and his family. Speaker Khenpo Sonam Tenphel and Sikyong Tsering, on behalf of the Central Tibetan Administration and the Tibetan people everywhere, congratulated the new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on his resounding victory and swearing into the esteemed office of Prime Minister of Canada. Both Speaker and Sikyong, in their separate notes, acknowledged and thanked him and the Government of Canada for their solidarity with the Tibetan cause and hope to continue building ties. On Monday this week, Kalon Gyari Dolma of the Central Tibetan Administration attended the 26th anniversary of Bharat Tibettv Sahyog Manch and Galip Institute in Delhi. Dr. Indresh Kumar, Margdarshak of the Bharat Tibettv Sahyog Manch, addressed the keynote speech, and Rekha Gupta, the Chief Minister of Delhi, attended as the chief guest. Kalon Gyari Dolma, in her address to the gathering, expressed her gratitude to the Indian government and its people for their unwavering support. She also highlighted the essence of the Bharat Tibettv Sahyog Manch's tireless support and contribution since its establishment under the blessing of His Holiness Dalai Lama in Dharamshala. On Wednesday this week, the 28th Annual Tibetan Shoton Festival, or the Third Festival in Exile, commenced at the Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts in Dharamshala with a record turnout of 14 opera troupes participating from different parts of India, Nepal and the United States, celebrating the vibrant tradition of Tibetan opera from May 7 to 19. This year's festival marks a particularly significant occasion, the Year of Compassion, honoring His Holiness Dalai Lama's upcoming 90th birthday. The festival was inaugurated in the presence of Chief Guest Speaker Khenpo Sonam Tenphel, along with officiating Sikyong Thalam Dolma Changra, Kalon of the Department of Education, Deputy Speaker Tsering, Justice Commissioners Tawa Phunki and Phakpat Tsering, Election Commissioner Lobsang Yishe, Public Service Commissioner Kama Yishe, and the Auditor General Tashitopke. Also present were standing committee members of the 17th Tibetan Parliament in Exile, along with senior officials and secretaries from the Central Tibetan Administration. On Sunday last week, in Amiens, situated in northern France, Thupten, coordinator of the Bureau du Tibet in Paris, met with longtime Tibet supporter Comment Yolande, as well as Deputy Francois Ruffin of the New Popular Front and members of the regional Tibet support groups. During the meeting with Deputy Francois Ruffin, Thupten highlighted the presence of a weekend Tibetan language and cultural school and shared detailed updates on the increasingly dire situation inside Tibet. Last weekend, the Tibet House Japan and Save Tibet Network jointly organized a two-day Tibetan spiritual festival at Tsukichi Hongwanshi Temple in Tokyo. The purpose of the festival was to introduce and share Tibetan spiritual and compassionate culture with the Japanese and other communities in Tokyo and to promote peace, harmony, and a sense of global community. Kimura Tomohiro of Tsukichi Hongwanshi and Representative Dr. Tsawanggyabo Arya of the Tibet House Japan gave the welcome address. Professor Hirano of Tokyo University talked on the history of Tibet. Professor Yoshimura spoke about Tibetan Buddhism and its applicability in daily life. Usui Taikan, a photographer, talked on His Holiness Dalai Lama and Kala Chakra through photographs that he has taken. And Kama Thuntup, a Tibetan photographer, presented his photos to tell Tibetan refugee stories. And a Tokyo University student, Inui Masataka, spoke on his experience in studying Tibetan Buddhism. That is all for this week's edition of Tibet This Week. See you next time.